and welcome to a very special edition of the K-Rad Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Chris with the K. We are here with the infamous Kevin Jackson here of Bleed Blue. Am I saying that right?
Bleeding Blue.
Bleeding Blue here at the 3rd Annual Chandler International Film Festival. We're outside Flick's Brew House here in Chandler. It's a lovely venue. You can have craft beer as well as watch amazing films. So what a cool place. And thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure, man. I saw you the other night when we were doing the red carpet, so I'm actually flattered you brought me back.
Oh, get out of here. That was so much fun. I had a great time at the opening ceremony.
Yeah, and I don't like that you have a better beard than I can grow, but that's a whole other issue.
Oh, get out of here. Get out of here. It's funny. This is, I had to avoid the baby face. Because people were like, are you 17? I'm like, no, I'm a man. I swear. So
he's a man, dang it. I swear.
Incredible. Well, I really wanted to have you on here because here at the K-Rad Radio Podcast, we like to talk about anything and everything that's rad. And I think that the message that you have with your film, I think is very rad. It's very interesting. And I would love to hear a little bit more about the film and kind of where it took you in your creative process.
Well, so Bleeding Blue is a film about policing in America. And the reason why we made the film, and my wife's right there, is because the narrative, it's just a BS narrative that cops are out there doing these evil things to people, particularly blacks, and I happen to be black for those listening to the program. And we just wanted to change the narrative because what happens is people propagate these lies, and then the black community is left in the wake of this devastation because guess what? Cops don't want to go police black neighborhoods. It's a dangerous thing to go. I mean, Phoenix doesn't have that big of a problem, but go to Chicago, go to New York, go to Baltimore, go to Cleveland. This problem is real. And the reality of it is 3% of the population, these are young black teen men, are committing almost 50% of the violent crime in this country. And cops are not out to get blacks. Blacks are creating a situation where we got to over-police in these neighborhoods, and now police are being, targeted and killed. So the project was around bridging the gap to make a real-life understanding of what's really going on in the community. Now, look, this is controversial because the politically correct thing to do is just let it rock and roll as it is. Let's believe that police are vicious killers of black people, and let's watch Kaepernick take a knee and pretend that there's this, vendetta out that every cop has against blacks. But then there's the real truth. And so the movie was made to document the truth and let the truth, set people free.
Very interesting. Well, I think that there's definitely a lot of controversy with it because there's always two sides to every coin. And I think that often what gets propagated in the media is the alternate view, which is that there is kind of the structural the social class.
Racism.
It's just racism.
And targeting of blacks and you'll hear things like racial profiling and things like this. Look, everybody, I love these topics because it's like profiling. Look, everybody profiles. I don't know if you're married or you may want to get married. You're going to profile the girl you decide to make your wife or whoever you decide to make your partner. You're going to profile that person. You're going to ask them to have certain aspects and characteristics that you like or don't like. You profile the business you want to work for. You profile the people that you want to have in your life as friends or family, or whatever. So this idea that cops are supposed to forget the human nature of things. Look, if people are wearing the uniform of the thug and you're in Compton and you see guys with their pants hanging down and they have the look of the gangbanger, you better treat them like a gangbanger and not like your banker, or you're probably going to end up getting robbed.
That's fair. And I think that we do have to acknowledge that there is racism and there is, definitely profiling, things going on that are negative. Like there are instances of that. But I think that, to your point, that's what gets talked about and blown out of proportion. And I think that it's definitely something that can get better. And I think that it's really cool that you're shedding the light on the positive side because I myself have interacted with a lot of police officers. Granted, I'm not a person of color, but I can say that 99% of the folks that I've interacted with have been courteous and they're genuinely out there for safety. I know police officers personally, and that's not to say that speaks for the entire community of police officers, because there's always going to be a bad egg, and whatever group you're looking at.
Well, but let me say this. So you're obviously a white guy. You say not a person of color. I'm just going to call you out. You're a white guy, okay?
It's fair.
And here's the deal. If you're a jerk to a cop, he will pull you out of a car and he will throw cuffs on you as quick as he will anybody else. But if you're nice, when you say I've had good interactions, let me tell you why you've had good interactions. Because you've been good. You've said, hey, officer, what was I doing? And all these other things. When you find in overwhelmingly the number of cases when people get, rousted by the cops, it's because they're being jerks. I had a cop in Cleveland tell me, Kevin, he goes, real talk. He says, if you're black, you practically have to make me give you a ticket these days. He goes, because I don't want to deal with the hassle. And this is a Puerto Rican dude. He goes, I don't want to deal with the hassle. He goes, it is easier for me to you could curse at me, you could do. He goes, now you can take it too far where I'm gonna throw the bracelets on you. But he goes, for the most part, you could curse at me, talk about my mother, whatever else. I'm gonna leave you alone. I won't even write you a ticket because I don't want to deal with that. We cannot let things like that happen in this country to where we completely ignore people that are belligerent towards police. Look, if a person's willing to tell a cop, F you, F the pig, or whatever, what do you think that person cares about you when you're walking through their neighborhood?
Right, but I feel like that's also, because I agree with you 100%, and I feel that education is a huge part of that, and I think that a lot of times education in some of those, heavier African-American, communities, like in Compton, let's say, the education of how to interact with the police officers isn't there, and so the only thing they have to go off of is what the media is saying and is what they see in movies, and I feel like that is a huge part of the problem.
Let me tell you, man, what's funny about that is you couldn't be more wrong. Blacks know more how to handle policing. We talk about cops in the black community more than white families don't grow up, and your family might say, look, you be respectful of the police and don't give a cop a hassle. Black folks we are told at a young age, all the things to do, don't run, don't do that. They're just immense amount of quote education.
Really?
Yes. The problem is we live in a culture where we say openly F the cops. We live in a culture where we say snitches get stitches. You cannot be seen being friendly with the police in any way. Have you seen the stories where like a Law and Order where a rapper gets arrested and it's the wrong dude? He's like, no man, hold me for a day because it'll help my street cred if I'm in jail for a day or two. Things like that. It's a completely different thing. So we understand how to deal with the cops. It is part and parcel street. You get your bona fides on the street by telling a cop F you and all this other stuff. So what do you mean? We're the people that show the number of bullet wounds. 50 Cent got famous because he got shot 7 times. That was the deal.
I think it was 9 actually.
Whatever. Yeah, you get what I'm saying? And so if he'd only been shot 3 times, it wouldn't be as big of a deal as 7 or 9. So you're out bragging about the idea that you disrupt the system and I made that cop have to give me a beat down. So this idea that we need education is not the case. We need a whole different cultural shift.
I was going to say, but where does that root come from? Like if there needs to be extra education for black people or kids, if it's talked about so much more so in the black community, what is the root of that? Why does that need to happen? Because I feel like if there wasn't a problem, then it wouldn't need that much attention.
The root is family, man, where like your father would never tell you to tell the cops, F the cops and resist and all this other stuff. Your father would say, look, if a cop approaches you, put your hands up. What do you need, officer? Blah, blah, blah. We are taught in the black community to be defensive, to be disruptive, to be defiant to police. We're educated to do exactly the wrong thing. So when you say, and we know, by the way, what is the right thing. The problem is the cultural thing. If a kid is shown being respectful to the police, he's probably going to get his butt kicked in his community.
Right.
So that's the problem. It's a cultural thing that has to shift. So, look, I understand everybody wants to solve the problem, but, and they feel like they know what the way it is. But, man, in the hood, it's a very different lifestyle than where I'm sitting right now. And I grew up in it.
Yeah, I was going to say, could you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, so my dad, my mother died when I was 5 years old. My dad was in San Quentin for almost my entire life. He was a stick-up man. And I grew up in the lower middle class black community in San Antonio, Texas. I wouldn't call it a ghetto, but it certainly wasn't anything like where I'm sitting right now or how I live today.
Right.
And so I tell people the story of my grandmother taking me to a shootout. And people are like, what are you talking about? Yeah, my grandmother woke me up one day and said, hey, we got to go. Your uncle is in a shootout with his brother-in-laws. And
wow, that's like Wild West vibes. That's like Arizona vibes from like 1800s. Like you would.
This is Tombstone, man.
Man, modern day Tombstone. All right.
Yeah, so, wow. and I tell stories about my nephew saying, hey, Uncle Kevin, I had to shoot my best friend because he was in a beef with my little brother. And people look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, no, that's the hood. And I won't bore your listeners with the story, but that is a fact. My nephew shot his best friend, and here's a quote. Uncle Kev, I only shot him in the stomach so he knew I wasn't trying to kill him. Now, that is a quote.
Jesus.
Now, if your listeners can understand that, then tell me about educating the black community, because I'm telling you, most of your listeners are sitting there going, "What? Who is this guy? He's a madman."
No, you're totally on the cuff, because I think that, just like we said when we started, there's two sides to every coin, and I feel like you have experienced it. You've been in the community, you've been involved, and you're educated, and you're here to educate a lot of people and shed light onto what you see as truth, because you've been on both sides. And I think that that's so important to have your perspective, because there aren't a lot of people like you that have experienced both and that are willing to take the time and the effort and build the resources to do a film, to come on to our podcast, to put yourself out there, because there are a lot of people who will disagree with you just to disagree with you, because that's just what they have been fed, what they've been told, what
that's
they see,
true.
Which is acceptable. And I heard, was there a little bit of heat in the after the filming in the
No.
in the theater?
Actually, everybody was pretty. They felt like it was pretty much spot on. I think what was surprising to most people was that they said it was so balanced, because I'm sort of known as the conservative black guy, and they figured it would be highly politically charged, but it wasn't. It was a true. And for the record, I don't have a political ilk. I consider myself a pragmatist. I believe in what's right over what's wrong every time, even when I'm doing wrong.
Right.
So, when I made this film, Melissa and I made this film, and our other partner, Kenny, the idea was, let's tell the truth about what's really going on, because how are we going to solve a problem if we keep sweeping the real truth under the rug?
Right. No, absolutely. And I think when all the resources and all the hype gets put onto one side, and the thing is that there shouldn't even be sides. There should just be the truth. And unfortunately, people have different truths. And so what they experience in their life is what they see as their truth. And I think that the ability to take yourself out of your own shoes and to look at it from a different perspective is a skill that not everyone has. And so that doesn't make everyone able to understand, oh, okay, this is why this is happening. I should not do this. Or let me look at it from this angle. And I think that people get so locked into picking a side. It's almost tribal, where you're like, okay, this group of people, I agree with them on X, Y, and Z, so I'm going to jump over in this bucket. And then before you know, you're caught up in believing stuff that you don't even necessarily believe. You don't know why you're following. You don't know why you're a part of this.
Well,
and I think that happens on both sides.
Well, you said the right word, and it is tribal. But let me just show you the problem with how a lot of blacks, far too many blacks, view this. So they say something along the lines of, there's too many police in the black community. So I would ask a question, well, why? Well, there's a lot of crime in the black community. Well, who's committing the crime? It's blacks. Blacks, we commit 93% of the crimes that we commit are against other blacks. If you go to a black community, it's not guys like you driving through, throwing rocks or doing drive-bys.
I'm a punk. I've had my days, for sure. I'm a punk.
Yeah, but you're not committing crimes in the black community. That I assure you. I don't want to sound like Trump, but
That's
this
true.
I assure you. Okay, but
Huge.
Right? He's huge. He's huge in the black community. Now, but here's the deal. So not only do we commit these crimes, but cops come over. Well, if a black guy's killed another black guy, the detectives who have to solve that case are cops. When the cops solve that case, you know who they're consoling? They're consoling the mother, the father, the sisters, the wives, the brothers, the cousins, the friends of yet another black guy.
Absolutely. And I think another piece to this, and I think I haven't seen your film, but I'm really excited to view it. And I feel like just the perspective of a first responder, my girlfriend is a first responder, and hearing the stories, when you're actually on the front lines dealing with these problems every single day, I would just think it's exhausting, it's draining, and the quality of life and the way that these people are trained and just the amount of volume in some of these larger cities of people literally at their worst that they're dealing with every single day, like that is so taxing. And I am so thankful we have peace officers, because could you imagine if there wasn't that like buffer?
Oh man, look, your girlfriend being a first responder, God bless her. I mean, this gentleman right here, he's a former police officer. We talked to him at the show, but here's the deal. This is what we found out in doing the film. So one of my buddies goes, Kevin, do you know at every suicide there's a cop? Every suicide, police show up. I don't care whether you jump, you shot yourself, you cut your wrist, whatever. A cop has to show up. Then the coroner, but a cop shows up and make sure it's a suicide. So just think, every death that occurs, every bad thing that occurs in this country, a cop has to be there, and what that psyche is. We studied it with cadaver dogs. I don't know if so when there's a building collapse, an earthquake, they have cadaver dogs.
Right.
And these dogs go and they look for bodies, and they go and they find nothing but dead bodies. And do you know these cadaver dogs get depressed? They have to retire them. They were retiring them because the dog wouldn't want to go look. So now what they do is they plant a live body, so the dog can actually find a live body. They'll have someone
to lift their spirits.
So they can go on. So I want you to think about, these are police that have to go into the worst of the worst. They're going into buildings tumbling down. They're going into car wrecks. They're going into mass robbery, whatever. I mean, mass shootings, everything that happens negatively in this town and every town across this country. Somebody has got to go and deal with that, man, and eat that sin that somebody else created. What do you think that's going to do to you over time? So it's a tough job, made even more tougher by politicians and people who don't give a crap. And, you know, for the people that do it, I tip my hat to them. And that's why I say to myself, when I meet with a police officer, I go, I don't know what he or she's been through, but I bet it's a hell of a lot worse than anything I've been through today. So I'm the nicest guy on the planet. I train these guys in martial arts. I'm a martial artist myself. I've trained more police officers.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I tell, no matter what I could do to them physically, I would never do anything to harm them, because I look at it as, man, I don't know what your day has been, but it's got to be worse than mine. So I'm going to make sure you leave this call going, thank you.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. I can tell from firsthand experience, like, you think you've had a bad day? Imagine dealing with a gunshot victim or someone that literally fell from a plane and you're trying to save their life, and, you know, there's just stuff everywhere and it's just chaos.
Oh, it's the kids that's the worst, though. These guys will tell you, you know, you go to a 7-year-old that got killed and she got shot in a drive-by, killed in a parking lot of a Walmart. You know, friends, one of the guys in the film talked about going to a house where kids had nothing to eat. One kid was playing in his feces. You know, hadn't eaten in days because the mom was a crackhead, hadn't even come home. I mean, the horror stories I could tell you would make you just go, okay, enough, Kevin, enough. Yeah, and it's man's inhumanity to man, and it's what's worse is it's parents' neglect of kids. You know, it's families' neglect of family killing family, things like this. In every one of those situations, a cop has to go and deal with, man. So rough life.
Hey, rough life. But I will say that the fact that we have people with a voice that are trying to shed some more light on it to try and make things better, I think is the overall. Because, I mean, by showing, hey, you know what, this is actually what they're dealing with, hopefully that can create some understanding. Because I think that education and understanding how to interact and trying to minimize, you know, the amount of negative interactions people are having with the police, I think will just go to help everyone. It's like the golden rule, right? Treat your neighbor. I think that's just something that needs to be propagated itself through society again. And, you know, I feel that through a lens like yours, that gets brought more to the forefront. So I really appreciate you sharing with us. I wanted to get your take, though, too, because this podcast normally focuses mostly on musicians and entrepreneurs. So do you have any artists specifically that you look to, you know, that you get inspiration from, or who do you like to jam out to?
So what's cool is in this movie, we have a lot of friends that are in music. I'm a terrible musician, but I love to play keyboards. But 20 Pound Sledge did the soundtrack for this film. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Sick.
Yeah. Buddy of mine out in California. One of my friends in Florida did the score, and he's a very good musician as well. In fact, one of his best friends is a drummer named Lee Levin, who plays for everybody. He plays for Katy Perry, Beyonce, all of them. Lee's an amazing drummer.
Queen Bee, shout out.
Yeah, but as far as like my musical tastes are really stuck in this crazy era. So and it's very eclectic. Okay.
Okay, try me. Let's go.
All right. So I'm a huge Kenny Loggins fan.
What?
Yeah. And here's what's interesting. Before you look at me with that crazy look, like this brother like Kenny Loggins, right?
No, it's cool. I like it.
Kenny Loggins is the second most sampled musician in hip hop. Kenny Loggins. You know who's number one? The number one most sampled person in hip hop?
Who?
Yeah, mind blown. James Brown. James Brown and Kenny Loggins. Yes, James Brown and Kenny Loggins, number one and number two. I didn't know this. I was talking to a drummer, and coming back from the plane, I was on a plane ride, been to a musical deal, and this kid is a great drummer. And I said to me, man, you're gonna freak when I tell you, Kenny Loggins is my guy. He goes, Kev, Kenny Loggins is the number two most sampled guy in hip hop. I was like, get out. People think of Kenny Loggins as like, Danger Zone and Footloose and all that. This dude has stuff on albums, man, that will blow your mind. So anyway, I'm a huge Kenny Loggins fan.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm like I said, I'm old school. I'm like Earth, Wind and Fire. And guys, you kids are my son will hear something on the radio that's 30 years old, and I'll go, man, that's old. He's like, no, it's not. It's like new. I go, no,
no, they sampled that. Like Dreamweaver on like Eminem's like album back. When that was like, oh, this is the first time I heard it, and then my dad's like, no.
Oh, right. No. We're listening to these things, going, are you out of your mind, man? That's like Sting from 1963. That's
right.
That's Bowie from 1974.
God, I love Bowie, but no, I have an affinity for older music. Especially rock music.
Okay, give me an artist.
So
I'm a real big Steve Perry, Journey guy. I love Journey. I don't know if you know who those guys are.
Oh, no, I know Journey. You know what's fun? Random fact, I went to school at McNary High School in Salem, Oregon, and the drummer for the touring drummer, his son, went to our school.
Yeah.
So I've seen the Styx. I love the Styx. I love Led Zeppelin is awesome.
Yeah, so those are all those
Black Sabbath.
Yeah, those are the mainstays.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I was gonna ask you too, like, what is your opinion of hip hop? In terms of, like, I love Kendrick Lamar. Like, Kendrick, J. Cole. Like, those are my guys. Like, those are true wordsmiths.
I got to bring my hip hop artist over here. This girl here is into everything. Yeah. I'll give you my little lesson in hip hop. My favorite song in quote hip hop is Gold Digger.
Okay.
By
Yeezy.
Kanye.
Yeah. I love Yeezy. That's my boy. Yeah.
Right. So that's like my all-time favorite song, because I just think it's such a creative song. And I've heard the guy's a musical genius, but I couldn't name another Kanye song. I know Jay-Z's song 99 Problems and This Ain't One, but I'm not into that genre, because I came up in a time where music really meant something, all the chords, and I don't like the sampled beats and the repetitive beats that you can just program in. I like it when guys are riffing.
I'll give you that, and I would say that that's the case with a lot of the mainstream rap and a lot of the like newer people that are coming up. It's just like sampled trap beats, throwing some hi-hats, you've got a song. But I will tell you that some of the stuff on Kendrick and J. Cole, like, they're true wordsmiths, and,
I believe
and
it.
their sound is so good. Like, you've got Dre working on their beats, like real hip hop, producers, that are like in the mix. They're in the culture, and it's a vibe. And
I believe it.
I highly recommend.
Now I believe it, and like I've heard, what's the guy, Jason Derulo as an example. Okay, I mean, kind of bubblegum stuff, but The Weeknd and people like that. I wouldn't know them, but I'll hear their music and I go, I like that groove,
right?
But it isn't like the old days where there was only like 8 groups when I was growing up. There was Earth, Wind and Fire, there was Confunction, there was Brick. There was only maybe 10 groups. That's all you had to remember, because they were the ones putting out all the music, and it was all Motown. But nowadays, man, you don't know who's going to be on a label. They can do it on their own now. And by the way, my favorite music, when I put on like XM radio, I like to find the obscure station where I don't hear the same doggone song 50 times a day. I want to hear something fresh.
Absolutely, and I think that's where the indie artists come in.
Yes.
And what's fantastic about this day and age in music is that everyone has the ability to DIY, to make their own stuff.
Yes.
And getting access to high quality studios is always still a struggle, but it makes it a lot easier for the music to get out there, to be shared, for a genuine message to connect with that's not just the radio. People aren't tied to the radio. And I think that's just, a sign of the times. I think that's a positive thing that's come from social media and the advantages of the internet and everything. Even this podcast, like, we wouldn't be able to have a radio show without the internet.
Technology is amazing, and that part of it I love, and I hope that it and I know it already has, but I want to see more of a generation of youngsters coming up and finding their voice. I mean, whether you're doing radio, whether you're doing TV, which I do both, or whether you're a writer. I mean, I love writing. I'm a prolific writer. I've got 3 best-selling books. But
what are those called?
Yeah, they're all political humor. But the point of it is that when you find your voice, however that is the best thing. It's like Mark Twain saying, the only 2 days that matter are the day you were born and the day you will find out what you were born to do. And I just think that is so profound because, there's so much out there, so much inside of people that you want to draw out, whether it's music, film, whatever it may be, or the written word.
Absolutely. And I agree with that 1,000% because there's genius inside of everyone. And when you truly put your passion to the forefront and you try and you go out there and you do what you feel is your truth, that's when you can achieve self-actualization. You can be truly happy, in my opinion. If you're chasing your dreams, even if you're not making money, even if you're not whatever, you just go out and do it. Try it. Life is short. And if you're not out there for yourself, then who are you living for? And I feel like serving a higher purpose and serving your dreams and chasing after what you genuinely want to do with your life.
Well, I'll tell you my little quick story on that. So in 2009, I left management consulting. I was management consulting, flying all over the world. My degrees were in electrical engineering, computer science, and math. I left that to become a sales guy and become a management consultant. I left that in 2009 to write my first. I never thought I could write. I wrote my first best-selling book in 2009, the next one 2011, the next one 2014. So I'm late on the next one. And then I decided to make a movie. Now, if that isn't the most crazy, direction of anybody, if you were ever going to go make a movie and become part of Hollywood, you certainly don't go, well, first I'm going to get my degree in engineering, computer science, and math, and then I'll go make a movie. You just don't do that. So you don't know what direction your life is going to go. So learn everything you can, take in the experiences of it all, and you don't know where it'll twist you, but it'll take you where you ultimately want to go. I got to leave it there. I got to get my kid to baseball.
That's fantastic. Thank you again so much, Kevin Jackson.
All right, buddy.
Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Special edition of the K-Rad Radio Podcast. Stay tuned for more guests. We're here at the 3rd Annual Chandler International Film Festival, and nice catch.